Did you know that you can create perspective views in drawings? Well, you can, and let me show you how. So in June of last year, Autodesk added the ability to do perspective views in drawings. So I'm going to show you how we can do that and some tips and tricks and methodologies for using perspective views. So I'm going to create a new drawing from design. Let's do ASME inch and maybe like a D size drawing in this case. I'll go ahead and do like visible only. I'll say okay, and it's going to create a drawing of just the parts that were visible on the screen. And now you can see it's allowing me to place my base view. And in this example, I'm going to do a northeast isometric. And let's just do maybe change the scale to like 1 to 8. I also like to do full length tangent edges, and I'll place this view. And once this view updates, you'll notice that it's a full isometric view. There's no perspective to it. So for example, all of these lines are vertical. This line here, it doesn't like disappear to a specific point like a perspective would. Like for example, train tracks, how they converge, this line here and this line here would converge to a point on the horizon. Well, in an isometric view, you can see that they're going to stay parallel no matter what. And sometimes that might be what you want in your representation. But maybe you want to have a more realistic representation, and that is where the perspective view comes in. And you'll notice under the Create menu, there's this perspective view. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and it also allows us to pick which orientation we want. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to say northeast isometric. We'll set the scale to be the same, 1 to 8. And then you'll notice this focal length. We have narrow and wide. And I'm just going to go ahead and we'll do both of these. So I'm going to go ahead and do narrow for now. And I'm just going to place this view and say OK. And you'll notice that it looks slightly different. So you'll notice that the vertical lines are, at a slight angle here compared to the ones down here because of the perspective view. And it's a little hard to see, but this line and this line here, they aren't perfectly parallel with each other. They taper down, and they would actually disappear at a point on the horizon, for example. And it just kind of creates a different slight representation of your assembly. So I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So that was kind of the narrow. Let's do that again with the wide just to take a look at the difference there. So same thing, 1 to 8. I'll do wide this time and place the view. So you can see in this view, the perspective is a little bit stronger. So to me, for example, these lines here look a little bit more tapered, like they're going to come to the termination point quicker on the horizon than they would in this view over here. To me, this looks a little bit more perspective than this one does here. And then obviously both of those look more perspective than the isometric view. And then if we were to come in here and edit all of these views, change them to shaded, I think that really kind of sells the perspectiveness of it. So let me go ahead and edit these views really quick. Change them to the shaded views. And you can kind of see what they look like in that perspective representation versus the standard isometric. Now in a previous video, I showed a tip on how to create your own custom isometric views by using named views. So if I come back to my 3D model here and I expand open my named views, you'll see your standard top, front, right, etc. But then you see I have a named view, and then I also created one called like Brad ISO. Well, I could do the exact same thing here if I come in and create a base view, and instead of orientation front, I say Brad ISO, and let's do the 1 to 8 also. I'll say, and let's do the shaded just to kind of keep everything consistent here. You'll notice this is going to be a different direction, different angle, so it's not your standard ISO. We're kind of looking at it a little bit more, down the length of the chop saw stand. But this is still an isometric representation. Well, I can do a perspective representation of this. So I'm going to go ahead and say create perspective view. I'll go ahead and select that Brad ISO and set the scale to 1 to 8, shaded, and we'll place that. This is the narrow. I'll go ahead and say OK, and we'll do the wide also. But you'll notice that using this direction, it's perspective compared to the isometric view there. And then let's just do one more with the perspective view. 1 to 8. And we'll do the wide. And I'll go ahead and place that view and say OK. And this is where I really like the perspective view, is when I'm creating like my custom directions. I think it really sells the product. Versus this view here, I can get something that looks a little bit more, what I think, realistic, better representation of the product versus just your standard isometric view. So give the perspective view a try. Play around with it and see what you can do with it. This is with an assembly. You can use it on singular parts if you want to, or full assemblies. Obviously, the longer your assembly is, the more the perspective will probably make a difference. But play around with it and take a look at it and see what you think. I hope you found that video useful. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe and share it with others. And as always, have fun learning Fusion. And see you next time.